but I just kind of got into the SEAL mindset, which is in this case the wrong one, which is like, just tough it out, put another rock in your ruck and keep pushing through. And pretty soon you're running on fumes and you're no good to anybody.
Welcome back yet again, episode 2 with the most interesting man in the building industry, Mr. Garrett Moore. We are recording this right now, Garrett. If anybody hears things going on, we have the benefit of seeing it, but we are at the International Builder Show right now. We're recording this before the mayhem, before the doors open for this show that NAHB puts on every single year. We're in Las Vegas. We're at the convention center. We're sitting in the Strong Conversations podcast booth, and it's a little bit of a fishbowl effect here. And we're looking out, and I see forklifts. I hear forklifts. I see somebody with the largest ladder I've ever seen in my life right outside the studio. They are constructing this entire trade show in front of us, which I think is very appropriate for what we're about to talk about, which is we've talked about your backstory in episode 1. We have gotten into the point of construction, why you're here. And we're seeing the construction of this trade show right around us. And you see things being built in real time right in front of us. You see things being shipped and dropped that were pre-built to these different trade show booths, which lends itself to you and where we are in this journey. So when we last left, you had bought land in San Diego.
Yep.
Your childhood friend bought a parcel of land right next to you.
Yep.
You also are in the U.S. Navy SEALs together. He goes conventional stick frame to build his house.
Yeah.
You go off-site construction. You have a bet for a bottle of scotch as to who's going to win this. You are a shoo-in to win this.
Of course,
right?
obviously.
Although that doesn't really go your way.
Not a chance.
You gotta give him the scotch.
It wasn't even close, actually. I think we're off by months. And if I'm honest, in some of my darker hours, there was quite a few days where I was ready to throw in the towel. I was just like, I can't be the service member and operator I want to be. I can't be the husband and the father I want to be. Like, screw it. Just sell it as is, halfway. And I'm so glad I didn't quit at that moment, but man, sure wanted to. And I think what we saw along that, I guess one of the early genesis of learnings was neither has it figured out. Stick built, all the waste that you talk about, labor, all that kind of stuff. But then on the offsite space, 2 major problems were readily apparent from the get-go. The first was 4 shoeboxes. Like it works because it's cheap and that's all we could afford, but it doesn't provide the architectural flexibility and latitude that most families want and need, or most lots require. The second thing is nobody was comfortable with the on-site to off-site transition or vice versa. And so we ended up paying general contractors to just figure it out at the job site. And we spent all the savings in time and money that we had, we ended up losing to try and pay these folks to kind of figure it out. And I'm literally, just this morning when I left my house, like, I've got squeaky subfloors because there was a handoff issue and somebody thought it was glued and screwed and somebody thought it was. I mean, just those little things, communication, exposed to me the friction points and why offsite construction has some challenges. So at this point, I am fully committed to the way I did it is not probably the perfect way. I see the benefits, but it's not fully baked yet. Yeah,
so you're seeing, and like you said, you guys have a real-time case study happening in front of you, right? Your friend's house is being built. You're building your house. You're seeing the advantages and disadvantages of both.
Yes.
Now, you guys start talking and are probably comparing notes. You got the old Venn diagram out, right? What's good, what's bad, similar, different. And again, that seed has been planted. There is a problem that you fell in love with. And you talk to your friend. You talk to your buddy.
Yep.
What happens next?
At that point, you start to run the math and go, hey, is this a cause worth pursuing? Is this kind of like a good idea thing, or is this, no, this is a pursuit and a calling? And for us, the toughest part at that point was to decide, like, we're not disillusioned with our day job. We love being a part of this community. We love being a part of the teams. We love the men and women that we're working with. And I think the thing that was helpful for us was to recognize that there's lots of different ways to serve your country. Sometimes it's in uniform, sometimes it's not. And I think for me, one of the things that I was reflecting on over deployed time living overseas and then just generic civilian time overseas, I love this country. Are we perfect? No, we do stupid stuff. Regardless of which side of the aisle you're on, like, we step on ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. But as a startup project, 200 and whatever we are, 40-something years in the making, it's not bad. Like, this startup is doing pretty well. And the thing that I love most about our country, one of the many things that I didn't see a lot overseas, is the resilience, the financial, spiritual, political resilience of a strong middle class is really helpful to weave together the fabric of society. And so when you go to these other countries, there's affluence and there's poverty, and there's something missing in the middle. And that to me is a staple component of what makes America great. And I started to kind of connect the dots in my head going, man, this isn't just a building science problem or a financial problem. Like, this might be a national security problem, like as one of the largest contributors to our GDP, and one of the greatest ways for families to essentially, Horatio Alger's rags to riches, like work their way up in society is through home ownership. And as I'm looking at the tactical problem, I'm also starting to study the macro problem, supply and demand, shortage of labor post global financial crisis 2007, 2008, and looking at this going, my kid's going to be able to afford to buy a house? Like, right. This is a big issue. And so as you weave in kind of the inner red, white, and blue layer of like the righteousness of solving this problem, plus the human component, and then you talk to almost anybody that's dealt with a construction project and the story is the same, all three of these layers converge into this kind of wonderful cocktail of passion that now, it's not that my passion for the team's faded, but I had a new passion that was worth the effort and time and blood, sweat, and tears that it would take. And so that was a critical component, because it's not like I didn't like the other job.
Yeah.
I just needed something that was all-encompassing that would pull me into the next chapter. And as we studied it, we found that.
So what did you find? Like, what did you guys end up?
What we found was, again, it's the naivete of youth. We found a problem that we loved.
Yeah.
And our belief at its core was, if you could take a small group of highly talented and coordinated people and solve this problem, there's opportunity there. And so I remember specifically the use case was, I was with my troop, and I was like, none of these guys know construction, but I'm nearly certain if
you were to take
them right over to my job site, we would figure this out, because we would work together. There wouldn't be like, oh, I'm a plumber, I'm an electrician, we're not going to cross. It's like, no, we're just going to figure it out. And the paradigm of a SEAL platoon is a really interesting corollary, because in a SEAL platoon, you have deep subject matter expertise, but you're a jack of all trades, master of one. And by that, what I mean is, if I'm the medic, I still have to be able to shoot a long gun, I have to be able to breach, I have to be able to jump out of planes, etc. So I might not be the dive expert, but I've got a buddy that's the dive expert. And when he needs help setting up dive rigs, I'm going to help him. When I need help with a pressure dressing, he's going to help me. And the paradigm stuck with me of like, okay, it's okay to have the expertise of a framer electrician, but then what happens if when you're not needed, you work together?
Yeah.
And so at its very simple core, the concept was, if I could figure out a way to take my passion for teamwork and interdisciplinary coordination across these chapters and bring it to construction, forget technology for a sec, there's an opportunity there. And I think that started the baseline from which we studied panelization and offsite construction and digital twins and all the other stuff that came. But like at its core, it was really about teamwork.
And that's when you guys created your business.
We actually founded it when I was still deployed to the Middle East, so I had to get the documents notarized in Kuwait at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much going on at the same time. I mean, you just have these parallel lines running.
Don't recommend juggling all those things at the same time if it can be avoided.
So the name of the company was
AGORUS.
AGORUS. What does that mean?
It had kind of two origin stories. The first is purely pragmatic, and it's tough to find a trademarkable name in the building space.
Yeah.
The deeper meaning was, we never wanted to lose sight of the fact that these are houses. These are where people are going to grow up and raise kids and have the core of their memories. And so the concept was, in ancient Greece, the agora was the central marketplace where the common people could come, and that was central to the fabric of society, plus us. And so we never wanted to lose the sight of the fact that we are a team. It's us doing this. It's not we're smarter than anybody, better than anybody, whatever. It's going to take a village to raise a startup or raise an industry. And that centrality, that common man, if we get lost in custom urban infill, super high dollar custom homes, like our goal is to solve a problem that can affect middle America.
Yeah. So AGORUS is founded. I love that origin story, by the way. I love the two parts of that too. Take me through that first, I don't know, like you said, 6 months or well, I guess how much longer were you in the military before you were able to fully focus on the business at hand?
So we ended up trying to double dip to keep our burn down. So my last tour of duty was as an instructor, so teaching kind of young officers how to deploy forces, manage assets in a combat theater, made for a relatively easy work-life balance.
Okay.
I'm still footing my personal burn on the Navy's dime. We can make some traction on business model, financial model, raising capital, et cetera. So we're kind of double dipping, using Uncle Sam to help defray burn at the time. So that's we founded in mid 2018. I didn't leave service till end of 2019. So there's about a year and a half buffer to kind of get a soft launch.
Okay.
And by the time I left, we had raised, I think, an angel round, I think maybe $500,000 to launch, see if the concept worked. And the concept was, for us at the time, we believed that the Goldilocks principle here, not too cold, not too hot, was panelization, because panelization would allow for a complex 3D structure that couldn't be achieved with volumetric or modular, but still would allow for a more assembly-like set of efficiencies. Where we kind of took the status quo and wanted to go further, though, is we said, there's a lot of folks that are panelizing framing out there. This is not that novel. What we believed at the time was, if you can take all the complexity out of the building intricacies, the coordination and collaboration across trades into a sophisticated digital twin, a single source of truth, not a layered BIM or federated model, but an actual single source of truth, and put a multi-trade panelized product in the market, that's probably the easiest on-ramp. And so that's what we were launching at the time. Now, as a frame of reference, Katerra's in their heyday at this point. SoftBank is pumping billions of dollars into them. And to a certain extent, I'd be lying if I didn't say I wasn't super discouraged. I was like, geez, these guys are going to knock it out of the park. They're doing everything. And they've kind of got a similar vision. And so I love the old adage, smart people learn from their mistakes. Really smart people learn from other people's mistakes. So I was like, okay, how can we learn from this failure? And obviously now it's a true failure, and we didn't realize that till midway in the journey. And how do we look at these other things and figure out our niche? What are we going to do well? And we believed at the time that Katerra was focusing more on 3-story garden-style apartments. We thought, hey, you know what? Residential mass market's the right entry point. So let's stay focused on providing a multi-trade panelized product to builders, 1- and 2-story kind of regional, national developers. And so that was our niche. We built our first home February of 2020. Obviously, the next month, the world fell apart, went to hell in a handbasket. And it actually ended up being a huge blessing, because what better time when everybody's battening down the hatches to double down and focus on innovation, R&D, working through the kinks, et cetera. So we were actually doing our first projects in the LA market, and I have no idea how to this day that it worked out. It came together pretty well. I was the crane operator. We were violating all kinds of OSHA rules and craning regulations, and you're bootstrapping it. It's like duct tape and 550 cord to keep the airplane together. But we found, like, holy smokes, this actually works. So we had a basic V1 digital twin. We had some used equipment it's a quick side story. At the time, we wanted to test the digital to machinery handoff. Katerra and Tekra, Blueprint Robotics, like Weinman and Styles machinery, like you could not get any machinery. So we had to go down, sketchy, like, Russian deal in Australia for used equipment. We didn't know if it was going to work. Kind of mattress on the apartment floor, like you're signing documents. Like, it had all the readings of a horror story. Right. And we bought this equipment used and put it on the open ocean and had it shipped to LA and delivered, because we were just, again, scrappy plus naivete. Like, now I would never do that. I'd be like, there's no way that'll work.
That's the passion that you guys had for the problem to solve.
You need a passion plus some stupidity. Like, if you have enough smarts, you wouldn't do some of the dumb things that don't scale. But you're ignorant. You're like, yeah, just figure it out. And you're like wiring high voltage lines together because you think you know what you're doing. So it worked. We cobble this product together and go, holy smokes, there's something here.
Yeah.
That's now 2020. Into the early parts of 2021, we embark on a journey to start raising some venture capital. Again, stupidity plus passion. No idea what venture capital is, don't know how to figure out the market. We're just kind of like cold calling. It's not getting very good. You're stepping on yourself, figuring this out. Eventually come across a firm that specializes in construction technology. Lead investor is a professor at Stanford teaching this, and we're like, oh, they get it. We are solving a problem. And so that's early 21. And now capital's starting to hit the market. The kind of the freeze of 2020 is kind of going away. Construction's about to hit like a huge slump, a huge boom out of a slump. And we're able to raise our first seed round. And at this point, now you're embarking on the journey of growing a team, establishing processes. And like I said, you're still figuring this out. You're a first-time founder. You're stumbling and bumbling. And so that's when it went from me and my buddy in a basement, so to speak, kind of scrapping it together to like, oh, this is actually, we have to run a business, a non-profitable business, but a business nonetheless.
You know, and you'd mentioned, really smart people learn from other people's mistakes. And one of the phrases that I jokingly butchered, if you listen to part 1 of our episodes here, Strong Conversations with Garrett Moore, you had mentioned the fact that in looking at other businesses that had a similar mindset in terms of what they wanted to do, one of the challenges that they faced, which ultimately led to their downfall, was that they tried to boil the ocean. They tried to do too much. They tried to be too many things to too many different entities, correct? And like I said boil the water, which really isn't that hard. You should be boiling the water. That makes sense. So as you're going through this, and you're venturing into venture capitalism, and you're pulling off shady deals with Russians with mattresses on the floor in Australia, and shipping equipment that probably shouldn't be equipment anymore to make it all work for a proof of concept, like you said, duct tape, putting wires together. That we'll see if this works. I don't know.
Just send it.
What's the worst that could happen? What could happen, right? So all of this is happening. You guys, like you said, you fell in love with the problem. You're still in love with this problem. You're making your way through, and you're growing. You're expanding. And you're around 2021. You had your first concept in Southern California.
Yep.
So what's the next project? Where do you go from there?
So at this point, we raised capital, and now you're starting to see some of the failures come to roost. Katerra, Blueprint, and eventually Integra being 3 of the big ones. And of course, in due diligence, anybody's gonna be like, hey, why can you guys solve this if SoftBank and a couple billion couldn't? And so that forces you to like understand and kind of do some looking in the mirror. And what we concluded was this stuff is hard.
Yeah.
I think as an outsider in the industry, you find almost one of 2 camps. One is you look at it and go, this is easy. We're landing rockets vertically on barges in the open ocean, and we're doing all these crazy things in cancer. It's easy. Not true. The other one is you can kind of get a more, trying to be sensitive with my words, maybe a more traditional approach, which is like, hey, I've been doing this the same way. My granddaddy did it. There's going to be no innovation.
Yeah.
And I fundamentally think that's incorrect. And so there's some happy medium in here. And Katerra's flaming out. You're starting to study it, and you're going, holy smokes. There was a lot of what they were pursuing that was really good, but it's like, wait, cross-laminated timber in the Pacific Northwest, concrete prefab in India and Saudi Arabia, and vertically integrated PTAC menu. Like, whoa, what are they? And so we had to answer the question, what are you guys? Who are you guys? What is your niche? And I think that forced us to do some soul searching, figure it out. And so our niche was, hey, we want to do this from the residential side and do it in a very kind of simplistic, we thought low CapEx way.
Yeah.
What we didn't know at the time was, okay, there's a lot of different on-ramps to residential. ADUs were a huge craze, still are in the Southern California market. So we dabbled with that for a little bit. Ran into the issues of it's tough to grow and scale a business when you're doing a lot of one-offs and you're getting wrapped up in personal preference and site and lot logistics and, hey, my kid's trying to sleep, keep the noise down. That was really hard. In fact, ADUs turned into some of our toughest projects. We tried multifamily for a little bit and realized it works, but it's lumpy. It's the rocks.
Lumpy.
You're going to get like the big chunk, and that's a project.
Yeah.
But it's very tough to manage your R&D and your factory utilization when you've got such a large slug coming through. And where we ultimately landed on is single family, single story, single family. Kind of, I say tract, but essentially, larger regional and national developers.
Yeah.
And the benefit to that is you get a lot of shots on goal, and you get a high degree of repeatability, which for an early stage startup is great because you just need to learn, you need to try stuff. The drawback is it's probably one of the lowest margin entry points because so much value has been kind of compressed out. And so we started to hit our stride at this point. We're now in probably 2022, starting to ship a lot of homes, realizing, actually Southern California is probably not the ideal market for this, seeing a lot of traction in Phoenix. So we're starting to scale up in Phoenix. In 2022, we're not making enough progress in the multi-trade components. So we're trying to feather the throttle and figure out how much do you put into business and revenue development and how much do you put into R&D. So 23 comes around, we're starting to realize we really, really have to put more into the multi-trade aspect. So we're continuing to raise more capital. At this point, we're now bringing in large strategics. So we had a couple large public building component suppliers on the cap table. And 2021, 22, like it's the heyday. Everything's crushing. Then that wasn't a Friday, whatever it was, Black Thursday or something, Silicon Valley Bank goes under.
Right.
And the world completely changed. I think I knew it, but I didn't fully absorb the magnitude of what it was. We, because I had a buddy that followed Twitter, like we ended up being one of those folks that essentially contributed to that initial bank run because we transferred all of our money out of Silicon Valley Bank into our sister bank account at the time. And I should have known at that time, holy smokes, if you don't trust the banking institution, there's going to be ripple effects downstream. That really started, that was the first domino that started a series of cascading effects that eventually came to pose some problems for AGORUS. And I felt really good about all the things that we were doing up until that point, but I was way too slow to read the tea leaves on what this would do to the capital markets and what this would do to the building industry at that time. So I've been kind of running my mouth for a little bit, but like 21 and 22, we were doing gangbusters. Early 23, now some of the pins start to drop that we did not react fast enough to.
You know, it's interesting, and thank you for bringing us to that, because when you and I first met each other a few weeks ago online, you introduced your name, and first thing you said was, do we want to talk about the fall of AGORUS, which is the name of the company?
Yep.
And it kind of like hit me in the mouth, like, whoa, this is where we're starting. He's starting with a lesson learned here. Mm-hmm. And obviously we got to know you over a bunch of different calls and know your backstory and all that, but here we are, back to the very first conversation that you and I had, the fall of AGORUS. And you said in 23, you're starting to see these warning signs. You're starting to see, like you said, the money's starting to dry up a little bit too. People aren't going to start investing anymore. And you have all these other things. You have your initial reason for going into solve this problem, and you're starting to put your fingers in the dike, right? Like trying to figure out how to stop the leaking happening. I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but what were the problems that you identified in that market where you said, I'm starting to see this happen?
So I'll go back a step and say, it's easy to poke holes in other folks that have failed. And so for me as a young founder, like, shoot, why did Katerra fail?
Right.
No big deal. We ended up going through a similar process, and I didn't fully appreciate it as a first-time founder, but when you start to raise capital, in order to continue to raise at higher valuations, you have to continue to be greater and greater in your ambition. And so we kind of got sucked into that trap too. I got sucked into that trap to a certain extent, which is like, okay, sweet, here's a $10 million raise, but we want you to do this. And as long as capital is cheap and you continue to go up and to the right, that hamster wheel is good to go. Your treadmill is fine.
Yeah.
As soon as something changes, now the house of cards can come tumbling down. Yeah. Intellectually, I knew that, but I had not been on the planet long enough, didn't have enough black and blue marks to actually really get it. So what we had started to do was, okay, cool, digital twin, panelization, this is the core. And then as you start to take on work, you're like, well, I kind of got to do all the manufacturing myself because I can't trust anybody or it's too difficult.
Got to do it myself.
Yeah. Well, if I'm manufacturing, I might as well ship it myself. If you're shipping it, like, let's just install it. Let's do okay, sweet. And then you start to get to a scale, and then you get builders that are like, hey, can I have 1,000 of these or 2,000 of these? And you go, shoot, my manufacturing machinery process doesn't work. Got a world-class roboticist on staff that comes from Tesla. Let's automate it. Let's bring in some advanced 6- and 7-axis industrial robots. Well, if you kind of already own all that, why not innovate on the building science? I'm being a little cheeky, but it's you don't ever jump to that, but it's death by 1,000 paper cuts, and you compromise, and you just like, let me do this. And it's good things, but if you add up enough good things, you're going to miss the great thing.
Yeah.
And we'll get to this later on in lessons learned, but it was never nefarious. We stepped out on this journey to solve all these problems, and any one of those problems would have been a business in and of themselves. We just tried to do 5 businesses at once, and I am not a charismatic or charming CEO enough to raise the capital to support that level of business in that environment. And I missed the warning signs to triage, start chopping off some limbs to preserve the core.
And taking one step divergent from the path that you wanted to take, and you look further down, and all of a sudden you're way far away from where you intended to be, right? I mean, that's kind of what I think of, is like, oh yeah, I'll just take this step over here because of whatever reason, and then before you know it, you're like, whoa, this is not where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
where I expected to be, but here we are.
And the weight and the pressure that it puts on your founders and your fundraising team gets to the point where, like, my wife was like, babe, I know that you're passionate about this, but like, if you die of a heart attack before you're 40, I will kill you.
We hadn't talked about that. We talked about the business side, and the lessons learned in the fall and the rise, as we call it. You and I haven't talked about the potential stress points this has put on the relationship at home with the kids, with obviously you're in business with one of your best friends in life who's living right next door. You've got your wife who's raising the kids like you talked about, and you're part of your support team. That time in your life has got to be challenging on some level at home, right? I mean, you have to be bringing this home with you on some level.
You trying to get a grown-ass Navy SEAL to break down on camera? I see your ploy.
Well, we have 4 of them, so just one would be fine. No, I don't mean to get. No, we don't have to. I just
honestly, I'll put my heart on my sleeve here. I don't know that I fully processed that. Like, in many ways, I spent 5 years raising a child, and I lost that kid sooner than I would have liked. And I don't know that I've spent the time to properly grieve that because I've been so focused on keeping everybody afloat. So the short answer is it sucks.
Yeah.
And the long answer is I probably need to spend some time with a shrink to really like unpack it over time, because it put my relationship with my best friend and co-founder like to its very limit. Yeah. It took years off my life. It bogged me down. So startups are not for the faint of heart. And I don't think, just like at a business sense, it was never a mile, it was an inch here and an inch there. I don't think I could see how badly I was hurting and how much I was mentally and emotionally and spiritually circling the drain. I think other people could around, but I just kind of got into the SEAL mindset, which is in this case the wrong one, which is like, just tough it out, put another rock in your ruck and keep pushing through. And pretty soon you're running on fumes and you're no good to anybody. You're drunk at the wheel as a husband, as a father, as a businessman. And so you're just kind of like pinballing down the lanes trying to drive straight, but you can't.
Yeah, I always go back to that phrase of every time you say yes to somebody, you're saying no to yourself. And in many ways, it seems to resonate here, in my opinion, as just taking on too much and maybe not even being fully aware of it or thinking, no, I've done this type of stuff before. And, for football and in the military and all these other things, I will get through this again. Yeah,
and that's the tyranny of self-strength. And that's going away from the departure of a team. Yeah. Many hands make light work. And I think it's easy as a founder or as a business owner, and I'm sure the audience can resonate with this, like it's really lonely.
Yeah.
Some of that loneliness is just, hey, you're at the top, like you've got to make hard decisions. And some of that loneliness is self-imposed, and you just kind of get in your own echo chamber and it gets dark, and then you get so dark that you don't actually know to ask for help when there's a whole bunch of people like standing around the pit going, hey, I'll throw down a lifeline. What do you need?
Yeah.
So short answer is, I'm probably still in the process of grieving that chapter.
Okay, and I think that's fair. And so I want to, we talked about the fall and rise of AGORUS, and we talked at the very beginning of episode 1 of what your title is now of the company that you are at.
Yes.
So we're going to end on that. But in order to get there, we have to discuss ultimately what happened with AGORUS. And maybe the lessons that we learned or that you learned that you can share with us, if nothing else, one thing for the audience to take away from that experience.
Absolutely. So 2023, the warning signs were there and we just buried the throttle. And I think the inability to say no allows to just a lot of yeses. And pretty soon you start to create so much inertia that it becomes really difficult. So by the time we actually declared, put the company into bankruptcy, we were burning through $1 million a month.
Wow.
Absolutely zero excuse for that. That's entirely on me. And part of that, I think, is you want to keep your employees happy. You want to keep your investors happy. And so it's just easy to keep saying yes, yes, yes. And at a certain point, you've got to make hard decisions. And I didn't make those hard decisions fast enough. Second one was, and probably the most important was, we were jack of all trades, master of none.
None.
We had lost sight of our core identity. We had lost sight of our core purpose and mission and that specific thing. And that fragmentation not just burns through money, but it loses focus. And so time is your greatest asset. And if you're not making enough progress, you're just kind of you're just not progressing as fast as the industry needs. And so we're now into 2024. Finally, those decisions have come to bear, and we're putting in a product that we're super excited about. At the very end, kind of like Atera in many ways, at the very end we had it figured out. We had built a very sophisticated multi-trade product that was buttoned up and weather tight for production builders inside of 8 hours.
Yeah.
That was a game changer. That was exactly what they're asking for. We had nailed it all. Starting to get communities and saying, sweet, here's 100 homes, go. I went back out to raise capital off of that, and we just could not support the burn needed at that business model. And so by the time we made the RIF, or the reduction in force, to go from a team of 70 down to a team of 9, hyper focus on what was our core competency, we ended up getting tripped up at the finish line. And it was over something silly, and well, not silly, it was stupid, but we had committed, we had signed a large lease to continue to scale up manufacturing, had not even gotten certificate of occupancy, had not even moved into the building or gotten the keys. The landlord would not renegotiate, and as a result, investors would not put new money into a business where you've got a $200,000 a month liability hanging over your head.
Yeah,
so it wasn't because the technology was wrong or the product. It was a decision that we made in good intent at the time, and ultimately we couldn't get out from under that. So we did our RIF from 70 down to 9, seeing if we could just Hail Mary it and preserve the core. A month later, we couldn't, so we put the company into it's called an ABC process, which is essentially a light bankruptcy for startups.
Okay. So anybody listening to this or watching this right now is just like gutted, because I can tell you they're like, man, this guy is amazing. He's doing all this stuff. You and I joked. I was like, you should go into politics with your background. And you said, absolutely not. If I want to remain living and married and all this other stuff, that will never happen. And I get that. I understand. But everyone's rooting for you. And you hear this and you go, we got to go into bankruptcy. And like you said, over something that ultimately maybe was outside of your comfort zone or outside of that focused effort that started this whole thing. So you had mentioned to me, because I'd asked you this question, like, what's the lesson here? Like, what's the lesson at the end of AGORUS that you could leave for everyone else?
It's focus.
Yeah.
It's being brilliant at the basics and knowing who you are, knowing thyself in a business. Find the thing that you can be absolutely brilliant at and better than anybody else in the world, and do not let good opportunities cause you to stray from who you are. And I say who you are in kind of a corporate identity sense of like, what is your niche? And I was weak in that context. My leadership was weak because I chased shiny objects, and we lost the bubble as a result. And so that was my biggest takeaway. And you hear it all the time, and it's somewhat trite, but like that was my thing of, okay, whatever I do ever again, I need to be focused.
So the lesson, like, hyper focused and be great at the thing that you can be great at, and just keep going with that. Now, you said you take that lesson into whatever happens next, wherever you go next. So the good news about this is that there is a next. This isn't the end of the story right now. We've got a little bit left. We got a little bit of movie left after the credits here.
Yes.
So where are we at today? We're in 2025.
Yep. And
you and I are sitting down. Where's Garrett Moore today?
In the aftermath of bankruptcy. You're dealing with a whole bunch of plunging the toilet, excuse the pun, as you deal with the wind down, and you do a lot of self-reflection. You can't help but critique your performance on the field after the game, and start to think about what would I have done differently, et cetera. And the more time that goes on, the more I forgive myself for some of the decisions I made. But part of it was, okay, what did we do right?
Right.
There's a ton of things to look at of what we did wrong. And a lot of people, when they do a postmortem or they do an after-action report in the military or whatever it is, they'll hyper-fixate on the interception that you threw or the whatever. But like, a lot of that process needs to be, what did we get right? So let's repeat that as well. And the thing that I go back to is our core vision was correct. Our belief that if you could create a very sophisticated digital twin that took all of the complexity out of construction and leveraged computers and software and generative design to do what it does best, and let human beings focus on what they do best, you've got a happy marriage. So let me go back and focus on that operating system, that digital conductor to the construction process. And so as I sat down with the 9 people that remained, and we reflect and we process, is there a future here? Is there a market? Can we make the go-to-market and business model strategy work? We realized that you don't have to do everything yourself. It goes back to the team analogy. You don't have to pass the ball and run the ball and catch the ball. Like, figure out what your spot on the field and go find 10 other players to do it. And I think as we started to take that mindset out to market and find, hey, manufacturer, would you be willing to work off of a digital twin to build a more sophisticated product? People are like, expand my margin? Yeah, count me in. Hey, installer, would you be interested in this? Yeah. And then you start to realize, oh, I don't have to do this on my own. I'm not alone. That started to put wind in our sails. We talked to builders and we talked to a little more folks in kind of the component manufacturing and building supply space. And we realized, actually, no, we got a lot right. The business model needed to be tweaked, but the core thesis, technology, productization, et cetera, was good. So let's do what we can to relaunch under that. And so as we kind of wind down one and launch the next, we are essentially hyper-focused on the digital backbone to powering this problem, essentially trying to allow the industry, the existing relationships, supply chain, infrastructure, et cetera, and if we take out all the complexity, let's let everybody else do what they're really good at. And so essentially the concept is you take a custom industry, a custom construction, break it down into Lego-like building blocks, whether that's a plumbing subassembly, electrical, framing, et cetera. And you weave all these pieces together in a sophisticated way. So the same building blocks can build the Death Star one time, or Barbie's dollhouse the next, or a little sports car the next, but the components are the same. And when you can do that, and you can do it in a sophisticated digital way, the drafting and the automation happens in real time, and you take out the fratricide of trade handing off to trade, handing off to trade. And the old adage, a camel's a horse designed by committee, you can take that out so you can actually build a horse instead of building the camel. So I'm throwing a bunch of analogies out there, but the concept is make a very sophisticated digital operating system that can allow prefabrication to happen in the industry, can allow panelization to enter into the industry using existing supply chains and infrastructure.
Yeah, like you had mentioned before, I've never heard the camel horse thing. That's a new one for me. But you had mentioned before on a phone call, meeting them where they're at, right? If this is how you want to do it, fine. We will give you a tool that'll help you do it that way better, faster, more efficient, and focusing on what you can absolutely change, like you said, make your mark in the world. Now, the interesting thing about this story is where, given everything that we just talked about, with AGORUS maybe ending and sunsetting, and then you have this new rise, where are you seeing the success in this? Where are you guys physically working on this new company?
Right now, the Phoenix coming out of the ashes happens to be in Phoenix, Arizona,
there you go.
My backyard, my hometown, for a couple reasons. One is it's going gangbusters right now. There's a huge amount of demand. We found some great early partnerships there that really helped get a running start. And frankly, the building product is pretty straightforward. The difference between how you engineer and design a complex house in Southern California with seismic and Title 24 and the rest is very different than how you can build in Arizona. So
100%.
As you're trying to stay focused as you launch a company, don't tackle problems that you don't have to.
Right.
Be hyper simplistic and focused. Find your core beachhead and then expand from there.
It's an amazing story, Garrett. I appreciate you sitting down. 2 parts. We probably could have done a third. Nate, maybe you've been right, but we got through 2 parts. First time in the history of this show that we've done 2 parts with any of our guests, so I appreciate that. Groundbreaking there. Anything you want to say before we sign off of Strong Conversations here?
I think the biggest thing for the audience or anybody that's listening is we want to be a part of a team. And it's going to take a village. It's going to take a team to make this transition from an analog on-site project and transform the industry into a sophisticated digital off-site product. That's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight, and we're definitely not doing it by ourselves. So anybody that's interested in that journey, whether you're a component supplier, a builder, a developer, one of the trades, we are interested in partnerships. And for people that have a like-minded passion or vision or want to be a part of where we believe the industry is going, love to connect, love to support them, do whatever we can to help their business. And like we said, I'm passionate about this problem. I don't have it figured all out. In fact, I have very little figured out, but I now know that I don't have a lot figured out. But whatever experience I have, I'm eager to share so that I don't want to see other people make the same mistakes I have. We're all collectively pushing this ball down the field. Katera got a couple first downs. Maybe at AGORUS we, 3rd and long and we missed it on 4th down. But if this ball continues to get marched down the field, somebody will push it across the goal line, and that's what I want to be a part of.
Well, he's a son He's a brother. He's a former collegiate athlete. He is a Navy SEAL. He is the co-founder of multiple companies now. He's the CEO of Tecton. He is a husband. He is a father. He is the most interesting man in the building industry. Garrett, thank you so much for being here on Strong Conversations, and thank you guys for joining us for part 2 of the 2-part episode with Garrett Moore. Stay tuned for more episodes of Strong Conversations. We'll talk to you guys soon.